During the 1990s, several women began disappearing around New Mexico and nearby states. Some were travelers, some were struggling with addiction, and others were simply people who had no strong support system. Because of this, their disappearances did not always attract national attention. Many cases remained unsolved, quietly sitting in police files. Behind this disturbing mystery was a man named David Parker Ray. Ray appeared to be an ordinary man. He lived in a modest property outside town and worked various mechanical jobs throughout his life. People who knew him described him as quiet, but friendly enough. He enjoyed working on vehicles and mechanical equipment. Nothing about his appearance suggested the horrors that investigators would later uncover, but hidden on Ray's property was something terrifying. Behind his home sat a trailer that looked ordinary from the outside. It was a simple mobile trailer, the kind commonly used for storage or living space in rural areas. But inside, it was something completely different. Ray called it his toy box. The trailer had been transformed into a soundproof chamber. The walls were reinforced so that no sound could escape. Inside were strange mechanical devices, chains, mirrors, and tools that investigators would later describe as some of the most disturbing evidence they had ever seen. Ray had spent years preparing this trailer. It was designed for one purpose: control. For years, Ray reportedly kidnapped women and brought them into the toy box. Some victims later told investigators that once inside, they were chained, threatened, and forced to listen to a horrifying audio recording that Ray had prepared. The recording lasted nearly an hour. On the tape, Ray calmly explained what he planned to do to them and how escape was impossible. His voice remained cold and emotionless as he described the terrible situation the victims were trapped in. Investigators later said the tape sounded almost like a tour guide explaining a museum. Exhibit X said the subject was torture. But for many years, none of this was known. Ray managed to keep his secret hidden in the quiet desert. He was not completely alone in his crimes either. Over time, investigators would discover that other people may have helped him lure victims. Some of these individuals were close to him, including his girlfriend, Cindy Hendy. Together, they created a terrifying situation for anyone unlucky enough to cross their path. Still, the crimes remained hidden for years. The remote location of Ray's property helped him avoid attention. The desert around the town stretched 4 miles, making it easy for someone to disappear without witnesses. Many people who vanished were never immediately reported missing. For Ray, this meant he could continue living his normal life, while hiding something unspeakable nearby. But every secret eventually finds a way to surface. In March of 1999, one woman would escape the toy box and run for help. Her desperate escape would expose the truth about what had been happening for years in that quiet desert town. And once the police began investigating, they would uncover a case so disturbing that even experienced detectives struggled to believe it. The nightmare of the toy box was finally about to be revealed. In March 1999, everything changed in the quiet desert town of Truth or Consequences. For years, terrible things had been happening in secret, hidden behind the isolated property of David Parker Ray. But on one terrifying night, a victim managed to do something no one expected. She escaped. The woman's name was Cynthia Vigil. Her story would soon expose one of the most disturbing criminal cases in American history. Cynthia had been kidnapped and taken to Ray's property, where she was locked inside the infamous trailer known as the toy box. Inside the trailer, she faced unimaginable fear. The room was filled with strange machines, chains, and tools that made it clear she was trapped somewhere designed for suffering. Ray was not alone that night. With him was his girlfriend, Cindy Hendy, who helped him control the victims. Cynthia later told investigators that the two of them worked together to keep her restrained. Ray seemed confident that his victim had no chance of escape. After all, the trailer was soundproof. The property was isolated, and he had done this before. But criminals often make one small mistake. One night, while Ray was away, Cindy Hendy entered the trailer to check on Cynthia. At some point, Hendy made a critical error while securing the restraints. Cynthia noticed that she had a small chance to free herself. She waited for the right moment. With incredible determination, Cynthia managed to loosen the restraints that were holding her. She knew she had only seconds before Hendy realized what was happening. Suddenly, Cynthia attacked. A violent struggle broke out inside the trailer. Cynthia fought desperately, knowing that her life depended on escaping. During the chaos, she managed to overpower Hendy long enough to run outside. It was the first time she had seen the outside world since being captured. Cynthia ran across the property as fast as she could. She was still partially restrained and terrified that Ray could return at any moment. The desert night was cold and dark, but she kept running. Eventually, she reached a nearby house. Desperate and exhausted, Cynthia banged on the door and begged for help. The people inside quickly realized something was terribly wrong. They immediately contacted the police. When officers arrived, they found Cynthia in a state of panic and fear. She told them about the trailer, the torture devices, and the man responsible. At first, the story sounded almost unbelievable. But the police knew they had to investigate. Officers quickly went to Ray's property. What they found there would shock even the most experienced investigators. The trailer was still there, and inside it was exactly what Cynthia had described. Chains hung from the walls. Strange mechanical devices filled the room. Mirrors were positioned around a chair in the center of the trailer. Investigators also found disturbing tools and equipment that suggested the trailer had been used many times before. But one discovery stood out the most. Police found a recorded audio tape made by Ray himself. On the tape, Ray calmly described how victims would be controlled and what they should expect while trapped inside the toy box. The recording was cold, calculated, and deeply disturbing. Investigators later said that listening to the tape was one of the most chilling experiences of their careers. As the evidence piled up, the quiet town began to realize the horrifying truth. For years, something terrible had been happening right in their community. And now that the toy box had been discovered, the investigation into David Parker Ray was only just beginning. But the deeper detectives looked into his life, the more disturbing the case became, because Cynthia Vigil might not have been the only victim. After the dramatic escape of Cynthia Vigil, investigators rushed to the remote property owned by David Parker Ray, near Truth or Consequences. What they discovered that would become one of the most disturbing crime scenes in American criminal history. From the outside, the trailer looked completely ordinary. It was parked quietly on the property, just like many other trailers found in rural areas across New Mexico. Nothing about its appearance suggested the horrors hidden inside. But the moment investigators opened the door, the atmosphere changed. The inside of the trailer had been carefully modified. The walls were reinforced and insulated, creating a soundproof environment where screams could never reach the outside world. Detectives realized almost immediately that this space had been designed deliberately and methodically over many years. In the center of the room stood a large examination-style chair. Around it were mirrors placed at different angles, allowing anyone sitting in the chair to see themselves from every direction. Chains and restraints were attached to the chair and nearby walls. The room was filled with mechanical tools and strange devices that investigators struggled to understand at first. Some of them appeared homemade. Others looked like modified medical or mechanical equipment. The overall design of the room showed careful planning. This was not something built in a single night. It had clearly taken years to create. But the most chilling discovery was not the equipment. It was a cassette tape. Investigators found an audio recording that Ray had made himself. When they played the tape, they heard Ray's calm voice speaking directly to victims who would be brought into the trailer. The recording lasted nearly an hour. In it, Ray explained the rules of the toy box and described how victims would be controlled. His tone remained steady and emotionless throughout the entire recording, as if he were giving simple instructions. Many detectives later said that the tape was one of the most disturbing pieces of evidence they had ever heard. But the discoveries did not stop there. As investigators searched the trailer more carefully, they began finding other clues that suggested the crimes may have gone on for years. There were drawings and notes describing different situations and methods Ray had planned. There were also photographs and videotapes that investigators believed could be connected to victims. Each piece of evidence suggested that this trailer had been used many times before Cynthia Vigil managed to escape. And that raised a terrifying question. How many victims had there been? Authorities began investigating missing persons cases across New Mexico and nearby states. Several disappearances suddenly seemed suspicious. Some victims had vanished near areas where Ray was known to travel. But proving those connections would be extremely difficult. The desert surrounding Truth or Consequences was vast and empty. If someone disappeared there, it was possible that no trace would ever be found. Investigators also learned that Ray had not acted completely alone. His girlfriend, Cindy Hindi, had already been arrested after Cynthia's escape. During questioning, Hindi began revealing disturbing details about Ray's activities. She confirmed that the trailer was known as the Toy Box and that Ray had been using it for many years. However, even with her statements, The full truth remained unclear. Police knew they had uncovered something terrible, but they still did not know how many victims had suffered inside that trailer. Meanwhile, the arrest of David Parker Ray shocked the entire community. For years, he had lived quietly among them. A man who appeared ordinary on the outside had secretly built one of the most horrifying crime scenes investigators had ever seen. But as detectives continued their investigation, they realized that the case was far bigger than anyone had imagined. Because the toy box was only the beginning. The search for answers was just getting started. After the terrifying discovery inside the trailer, investigators quickly arrested David Parker Ray. News of the case spread rapidly through the small community of Truth or Consequences, leaving residents shocked and afraid. Many people could not believe that such horrifying crimes had been happening in their quiet town for years. But for detectives, the arrest was only the beginning. The main goal now was to understand how long Ray had been committing these crimes and how many victims there might have been. Investigators started by examining every piece of evidence collected from the trailer. The strange equipment, the notes, the audio recording, and the photographs were carefully analyzed. Each item suggested that the toy box had been used repeatedly over many years. But there was a major problem. Very few victims had ever come forward. The only clear survivor who had reported the crimes was Cynthia Vigil, whose escape had exposed the entire case. Without her courage, the crimes might have remained hidden even longer. Police began searching for other women who might have crossed paths with Ray. Some missing persons reports suddenly looked suspicious, especially those involving women who had disappeared while traveling through New Mexico. However, proving a connection between Ray and these disappearances was extremely difficult. The desert surrounding the town was vast and unforgiving. If someone vanished there, evidence could disappear quickly. Meanwhile, investigators continued questioning Ray's accomplice, Cindy Hendy. During long interviews with detectives, Hendy admitted that she had helped Ray on several occasions. She described how Ray would carefully plan his crimes. He often targeted women who were alone or vulnerable, knowing that they might not immediately be reported missing. Hendy also explained how Ray had spent years building and modifying the trailer to create the toy box. But even with Hendy's cooperation, many questions remained unanswered. Authorities soon discovered that Ray may have had connections with other individuals who were aware of his activities. One of those people was his own daughter, Glenn Headley, who was later investigated for helping lure victims. The possibility that multiple people had been involved made the case even more disturbing. As the investigation continued, detectives faced another challenge. Many of the potential victims had never been officially reported missing. Some were travelers passing through the area. Others lived unstable lives that made it harder for authorities to track their movements. Because of this, the true number of victims might never be known. Law enforcement agencies from different states began sharing information, trying to connect Ray to unsolved disappearances. Investigators searched nearby desert areas, hoping to find physical evidence that could link him to other crimes. But the harsh desert landscape made searches extremely difficult. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. While investigators continued their work, the legal process against Ray also began moving forward. Prosecutors prepared their case using the evidence from the trailer, the audio recordings, and the testimony of Cynthia Vigil. Even experienced detectives admitted that the case was one of the most disturbing they had ever encountered. What made it even more shocking was how long Ray had managed to hide his crimes. 4 years, he had lived quietly in the community, while secretly operating the toy box on his property. Now, as the investigation expanded, the truth about his actions was finally being revealed. But the story of the toy box killer would not end in a typical courtroom battle, because before the full truth could be uncovered, something unexpected would happen that would leave many questions forever unanswered. As the investigation into David Parker Ray continued, the case became one of the most disturbing criminal investigations ever connected to the quiet town of Truth or Consequences. Detectives had uncovered terrifying evidence inside the trailer known as the toy box, and the testimony of Cynthia Vigil had revealed the horrors that had taken place there. But despite the shocking discoveries, many investigators feared they might never learn the full truth. Prosecutors began building a case against Ray using the evidence recovered from his property. The disturbing audio recording found inside the trailer became one of the key pieces of evidence. On the tape, Ray calmly explained how he controlled victims and described the terrifying situation they were trapped in. The recording alone was enough to show the level of planning and cruelty behind the crimes. Meanwhile, Ray's accomplice, Cindy Hendy, faced her own legal battle. During questioning, Hendy admitted that she had helped Ray on several occasions. Her testimony helped investigators understand how the toy box operated and how victims had been controlled. In court, the bravery of Cynthia Vigil played a crucial role. Her escape had exposed the entire operation and allowed police to discover the trailer before more victims could be harmed. Without her courage, the truth about the toy box might have remained hidden for many more years. As the case moved through the legal system, the public became increasingly aware of the disturbing details. Media reports described the trailer, the audio recordings, and the equipment investigators had discovered. People across the country were shocked that such crimes could remain hidden for so long. However, the legal outcome of the case would not follow the dramatic courtroom battle many expected. In 2001, before a full trial could take place, David Parker Ray died in prison from a heart attack. His sudden death ended the possibility of a full confession or a detailed explanation of everything that had happened inside the toy box. For investigators, this was deeply frustrating. Ray had been the only person who truly knew how many victims there were and what had happened to them. With his death, many of those answers disappeared forever. Authorities had long suspected that the number of victims could be far greater than the cases that were proven in court. Some investigators believed there might have been many more victims who were never identified, but without clear evidence or confessions, those suspicions could never be fully confirmed. Meanwhile, Cindy Hindi was eventually convicted for a role in the crimes and served time in prison. Her involvement revealed how Ray had managed to continue his activities for so long. Even after the case officially ended, it continued to haunt the community. The discovery of the toy box had shattered the peaceful image of truth or consequences. Residents struggled to understand how such horrific crimes could have taken place so close to their homes without anyone realizing it. For detectives who worked the case, the memory of the investigation remained unforgettable. Many said that the evidence they found inside the trailer was unlike anything they had seen before. Today, the story of the toy box killer is still discussed in true crime documentaries and investigations. It remains one of the most chilling examples of how evil can hide behind an ordinary appearance. And although the case officially ended with Ray's death, one question still remains. How many victims were truly lost inside the toy box? That mystery may never be solved. If you want more shocking and mysterious true crime stories like this, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story. Every week, I bring you real-life cases that are both shocking and unforgettable.